Welcome to r/reader of Reddit. And in today's episode, Brother's girlfriend asks OP to change her unborn daughter's name. Before that, AITA for laughing at my parents for an impossible mix-up? We was staying with my parents for 2 weeks, and my daughter Lizzie is a vegetarian. We bought some impossible beef, and was going to use it for a later date. My whole family gives Lizzie a hard time for being vegetarian, but she has been one for almost 10 years from 6 to 16. I have gotten all kinds of hell around the holidays because of things Lizzie wouldn't eat because it had chicken broth or bacon fat in it. I went to the freezer on day to thaw Lizzie meat for burgers that night. It was gone. My mom refused to get cataract surgery and somehow made the whole family Lizzie's gross fake meat, and not one person noticed. It was funny, and I told my daughter and my family and laughed at them. My dad got extremely angry at us because he always talks shit about grilling Lizzie's burgers and calls them gross. There was 2 meals that week. It could have been a meatloaf or taco meat, and no one noticed. My dad is calling me an asshole, saying how could we be so careless, and someone could have gotten sick from eating the fake meat, but it says impossible in large letters on the packaging, so it was my mom's mistake, and no one at the time said the meal tasted any different, not even my picky-ass father. So, how judgmental they are of Lizzie. Then Dad refused to have the fake meat in the home because of that, and instead Lizzie ate a mushroom burger, but I told him I think he's overreacting to this, but he told me I could stay in a hotel because I played a mean trick on everyone. He was grumpy with both Lizzie and I for the rest of the vacation. Next story is AITA for taking away my mother's use of my car? A little background. My mom lives with my husband and I due to her limited retirement budget and advancing age. She's 68. She has been single 12 years following her 3rd divorce to a lovely man she was terribly unkind to after he became disabled. I have been her biggest cheerleader and financial supporter during her transition from divorce, recovery from her 2nd bankruptcy, helped her find and get a job, retire at 62, get established with the VA for health/mental health care, essentially kicking and screaming, and yet I can't get her to barely lift a finger to pick up after herself or her 3-year-old pug. She totaled her SUV in 2023 after her 2nd accident that year, and she is not able to take on a car payment until she pays down some debt, and we're in no position to co-sign with 4 kids, 2 over 20, 2 teens, and a grandchild on the way. I even added her to my insurance so she could drive my car on occasion, obtaining full coverage just in case. Yes, I'm terrified every time she borrows the car. Anyway, 2024, she started experimenting with online dating, and she has met someone she is convinced she is in love with. He's a bit younger, works at a pizza place, is a year sober, lives in a sober living facility, and does not have a car or license. In the last 6 months, she's overdrawn her bank account several times and borrowed $500 while borrowing my car 4x's a week and only filling up the tank a couple of times. I try not to be judgmental, but the red flags are clearly blowing in the wind here. My car is very well known, noticeable, and I am concerned about it being at a recovery facility since I am a drug and alcohol counselor. My job has a zero-tolerance policy, and for good reason. Boundaries are important. As a result, she is no longer allowed to drive my car there, and I don't want this dude at my home. She screamed at me I am taking away her rights, but while I am not a fan of this fella, I am only taking away her privilege to drive my car to her boyfriend's recovery house or have him at our home. She is free to come and go as she pleases with friends, and I have showed her how to use Uber and Lyft. I just need to take my car out of the recovery house equation. She continues to cry to me and negotiate to go over there in my car. I told her I cannot give her any more money, and she needs to figure out how to see her boyfriend on her own. AITA, or am I protecting my career and my livelihood? Next story is AITA for telling my neighbor to respect my toddler's boundaries? My neighbor, 59F, saw myself, 30F, my son, 2M, and my daughter, 5F, outside in the front yard today and decided to walk over to chat with the kids. It was mostly small talk with my daughter, Lily, about how big she is and her preschool. My neighbor, Danielle, then turned her attention to my son, Jackson, who was running carefree in circles. She looked at him and said, "Aren't you huge? I need to pick you up," and started walking towards him. He ran away, as toddlers do with people they aren't super familiar with. Normally, this is the part where people make a joke about him running away from them, and they move on. She did not move on. She kept trying to corner him for lack of a better term, which when she did, he would shake his head no, wave, and say bye. He doesn't speak much, but I feel like that is clear enough. I politely let her know that he doesn't seem to want to be picked up right now. I made sure to make it seem lighthearted by mentioning that he probably is focused on playing with his sister. I thought this would be the end of our interaction, but she continued to chase him and try and pick him up. Now, when I saw chase him, I don't mean the cute little, I'm going to get you peekaboo type play run. She was booking it as fast as her legs would let her to keep up with him. Now here is where I might be the AH. I said, Danielle, I think he is wanting you to respect his space so he can go back to playing, and she said he is a baby and doesn't get a choice. My tone was a lot more stern when I said both of my children are allowed to set boundaries and those boundaries will be respected or you will need to hop back over to your yard. I don't have a great word for how she was looking at me, but bewildered and appalled will have to work for now. She mumbled something about millennial parents and disrespectful kids, and then walked back to her house. A little background, we are not very close with this neighbor. We wave when we see each other, we exchange Christmas cards, and have the occasional how's the family talk. She is a nice enough lady, but the drama with her children and grandchildren causes us to avoid delving into any further contact. Her daughter and son are in their late 30s and live in her home currently. They are obnoxious when they drink, to say the least. They usually end up fighting one another or inviting friends over to fight, with leading to the police being there quite often. We avoid them as much as possible because I find their behavior triggering and don't want my children exposed to it. Even with that being said, they've rang our doorbell in the middle of the night and come and tried to talk to my kids when they can barely form a thought. It's just kind of chaotic and frustrating, so we avoid when we can. TLDR, AITA for asking my neighbor to either respect my toddler's boundaries or go home. Next story is AITA for not being bothered by what other thinks. I just want to know if it's just me not understanding from my husband's point of view. I'll make it quick and short. Married for little over 2 decades. I cook pretty much daily. Hubby's mom never tasted my cooking because whenever we visit them, they cooked. Emile doesn't speak English, calls hubby, asked what we cooking for dinner. Hubby told her in their native tongue, name of a dish from their country. They chatted a bit and everything was fine. Later that night, hubby starts talking and mentioned part of the conversation he had with his mother earlier. Somehow it turned into a fight. He told his mom I was making a dish from their country. I asked, why you lied to your mom? I made burgers. He said something along the lines of, they think we only eat American food, even though it's not true, but just so happens the night she calls, we having burgers, so I lied to her to defend you, since we just had name of that dish 2 days ago. I said, I don't care they think that. We've been together for so long. I'm sure you've told them I know how to cook by now. He said, I have, but they don't believe me since they've never seen you cook, but they know I know how to cook, so I lied to defend you. I said, I don't care if they don't believe it. It doesn't bother me. It shouldn't bother you either. He says I don't get it. It's these little things that matters and that I has no reason to yell and be mad at him because he lied on my behalf and that I'm like this about everything. Just imagine if he also didn't care and just acted like me. Am I missing something here? This has been shortened as best as I can. Thanks in advance for the input. Next story is AITA for refusing to change my unborn daughter's name. For context, my brother 34, M, and his girlfriend 28, F, have been together for 8 months, and my brother has admitted it's already getting a bit rocky and he's debating leaving her. After a few months of trying, me 27, F, and my husband 28, M, are pregnant with our first baby. I am 20 weeks along and have been very unsure about a name for our baby girl until 2 weeks ago. At first we were hesitant about being public about the name as I know disagreements can occur. I won't lie, it's a pretty basic name, but it's his late grandmother's name and a name I had always liked, so we went with it. Just a bit more context, my husband lost his mom at 8 years old, and his father was never really present, so his grandmother became his caregiver and a massive part in his life. We started dating at 14 and 15, and from the start I was open about my home life not being the best, and she welcomed me in her home whenever I needed. She was also a massive part in my life and helped me get through my abusive parents, now on better terms, and bullying, so we always had a good relationship. So, this wasn't just a name I was going with for my husband. We both loved the idea of our baby girl to take the name of her great-grandmother and to wear it in honor of her. After we announced the name, my brother's girlfriend flipped. She stated that was her late daughter's name, from a different man, not my brother, so I had no idea that was her name. My brother just informed us her daughter had passed last year, and to be careful on those sorts of topics around her, but the name was never brought up. She immediately demanded we change the name and said the baby wouldn't care. I explained it was also in honor of husband's late grandmother, and it had real meaning to us, and we didn't want to change it, but she insisted she couldn't hear her daughter's name, especially not on another child. I understand it must be so hard, but the name has meaning to us, and if I'm being honest, if she was genuinely a part of my family, I may have considered, but my brother wasn't sure if they were forever. I offered for them to come up with a nickname we use around her if she desperately didn't want to hear the name, but she refused and said she doesn't care about whose grandmother is dead. She had it coming, but her daughter still had her whole life ahead of her, and called me an inconsiderate cow. My brother broke up with her on the spot, and now all my friends are saying I took it too far, but I really don't see how. So, AITA? Edit. Some people believe this story is fake due to me including my friends randomly at the end, but these three girls were my closest friends, and we have very similar opinions and have always told each other everything. My brother GF had gone and told them, and other people apparently, but no one else has contacted me. I knew the name and did it in spite of her. Obviously, that's not true, and I didn't include it before, as I didn't want the story to be too long.